With the new Section 31 movie starring Michelle Yeoh coming out soon, I wanted to go back and look at the history of this organization, this shadowy, amoral, clandestine antagonist to our Starfleet heroes that I primarily know from their involvement in Deep Space Nine. I know that they're in Enterprise a little bit and in parts of Discovery as well, but I have only watched bits and pieces of Discovery, so I just wanted to get the flavor of them into my system, and I discovered this book in 2001 where Captain Kirk goes up against Section 31, and I gotta say that S.D. Perry did an excellent job with her writing. She absolutely nails the characterization of all of the main characters of the Enterprise crew. Especially Kirk and Spock get special treatment in this episode as they are such moral and upstanding characters. They are literally the moral pillars that the Star Trek series is built upon, and to see them go up against the shadowy, clandestine group that thinks the ends justify the means, that just goes against Kirk and Spock. And this book not only has them, I mean, obviously Kirk and Spock are the good guys, but it makes them question their own morals in a way that makes perfect sense after the events of the Enterprise incident where Kirk and Spock must undertake subterfuge to steal a cloaking device from the Romulan Empire. This book finds them some time later grappling with those decisions. I mean, Spock manipulated and lied to the Romulan commander, who he did have a genuine connection with that he wasn't expecting, but because of his duties to Starfleet and the orders that he was given, he had to lie to her, steal from her, and ultimately get her captured by an enemy state. Now, she is treated well. She has her own room in a starbase, and she's going to be given back to the Romulans. She's not being interrogated or anything, so that I was worried that this was going to be something like Section 31 got their hands on her and brutalized her and interrogated her. No, it definitely stays within the kind of bounds of something that the original series would show, but it has more depth to the character than a single episode of a TV show from the 1960s would allow. We get to really get insight into Spock grappling with those past decisions, and Kirk finds himself grappling with all of the various examples of Starfleet officers who have gone bad that he's come up against throughout the course of the original series. Good men who have abandoned their ideals and now coming up against Section 31, which claims to protect the ideals that he holds dear, but are murdering people and blowing up ships and threatening to cause a major imbalance of power throughout the quadrant, all in the name of protecting Starfleet. But is that really what they're doing? I thought that this was excellently done, with one exception. Now, it takes place just before the episode For the World is Hollow and I Have Touched the Sky, and in that episode McCoy has been diagnosed with an uncurable disease and decides, alright, I'm gonna leave the Enterprise crew and live on this asteroid ship with this random woman, because I'm gonna die in a year, so why not? And that episode is it's not bad. It's certainly not a bad episode of the original series, but it's not one of the stronger ones. I had to rewatch it after reading this book, as I kind of didn't really remember anything about it. And I think the context of this book does make Dr. McCoy's decisions make more sense. Diving into his uncovery of his disease in this book makes it make sense, but that storyline feels so disjointed from everything else going on with the Section 31 stuff here. I mean, while this is certainly a Kirk and Spock book, Uhura gets to have her moment where there's a secret code that they have to break, and she's the code breaker on the ship, so she dusts off those skills and has to really beat her head against the wall to figure out this code to get some more information on Section 31. There's moments for Scotty when he has to do some engineering miracles as they are put up against Well, we'll get there in a second. And Chekhov has some investigative work that he does. Sulu's got some fine flying that he's got to do. But McCoy, due to the nature of kind of what they're pitted up against, doesn't have a whole lot to do that's connected to the main plot. So they give him this character thing that's completely unrelated to anything going on in this novel, except for a very forced connection between a character who can maybe cure him and someone who's also working for Section 31 for some reason. So that part, while it makes the episode of the original series better, I don't think it fit well in the story being told in this book. This book really emphasized the fallout, the effects for the Enterprise incident and other episodes where the crew goes up against Starfleet officers who have gone bad. So it kind of, other than like, oh, in the timeline this takes place right before For the World is Hollow and I've Touched the Sky, the themes of that episode don't really touch here, with the exception of there's one small scene in that episode where Kirk contacts Starfleet Command and they tell him, hey, yeah, McCoy decided to leave and live on that asteroid, but you can't just like follow that asteroid for a year. Like, you gotta go and do flagship things. And Kirk's like, fuck Command. And this book does give, like, it reason for him to question Command after the knowledge that Section 31 can influence or perhaps be some of those upper echelon admirals and commodores in Starfleet. But again, it's kind of loose. So that part of the book aside, which I still think it's well written, but it just doesn't fit here. I found myself going, okay, can we get back to the story every time the Dr. McCoy stuff came up, which is sad. I like Dr. McCoy. But the threat that Section 31 is causing here is that they are using the stolen cloaking device from the Enterprise incident to hide a space station where they have a bunch of scientists with questionable morals working on developing an Omega particle, which we see in the Voyager episode, well over 100 years after the original series, that Starfleet captains are ordered to destroy Omega on sight because of how destructive it can potentially be. Well, this is Starfleet's first encounter with the Omega particle, giving the backstory to the commands that Janeway has in the Omega Directive episode. Overall, I was gripped from start to finish with this book. It's, again, fantastic writing for Kirk and for Spock, as well as some of the other characters. We have a chapter or two with the Romulan Commander, where Spock has to go to her to try to get some information about the cloaking device to track down Section 31, that I thought was excellent. I had a fantastic time revisiting her character. So I think that for a Section 31 story being put into the tone and vibe of the original series, I mean, this is the gold standard right here. If that at all interests you, I highly recommend checking out this book. It's a very quick read. Clocks in at, 200 pages? 211 pages. So a fairly quick read. I got it done in 2 or 3 days, just reading before going to bed. Highly recommend it. And now my Section 31 vibe, the duplicitousness is excited, but I'm hopeful for the movie that there is some kind of moral character to go up against. In Deep Space Nine, we have Julian Bashir, who has his Starfleet morals intact, and here it's Kirk and Spock's opposition to Section 31 that is the most intriguing. And with Michelle Yeoh's character, Michelle Yeoh's a fantastic actress, but her character is morally dubious at best. So I really hope we get to see some of that moral quandary that makes Section 31 such a compelling villain, as opposed to this just being a Mission Impossible, but in Star Trek with lots of explosions. That's not really what I want. But we'll see. That movie's not out yet. But if you really want those kind of Section 31 vibes, again, this book, fantastic. Let me know what you think of either the book if you've read it, or that kind of concept down in the comments below. Let me know what you are hopeful for the Section 31 movie, and just other Star Trek stuff. I have been a huge Star Trek nerd for many years now, so I just love talking about it. Well, thank you so much for watching, and have a good week.